Welcome to English 4E Term 1B. This is class number 9. We're going to be looking at assignments K13 and K14 today and kind of learning all about present and past participles. This is Jillian Percy, and I'm going to talk to you about ways to contact me. So if you want to call the studio right now, you can call 1-800-465-7144. You can always fax us at 1-800-463-7852. My email is jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca or jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. My Facebook is capital G, capital P, E-R-C-Y, space, capital W-A-H-S-A. Uh-oh, I think I'm being tuned out here. The sound guy must not like my, doesn't want to learn about past participles today.
Mic's not on.
It says it's on.
I can't hear you on the other side.
Right. If anyone can hear me out in Radio World, give us a phone call and let us know, because we're not sure if it's working or not. But the Zoom is working, so this should be saving regardless. So I apologize to those who might listen to this later. Sometimes things happen. There's two different YouTube channels that you can find our classes on. One is my teacher YouTube channel that has all the classes I taught from last year. And it also has this playlist from this year. It should be the first thing that comes up if you hit playlists. And then if you go to, there's kind of a mega WASA distance education YouTube channel that has all the classes we've taught from September. That's all the teachers, not just me, but there's nothing from the previous years. So that's why I still keep the other channel up, because if you're trying to take a course that I haven't taught yet, the information is still there. Keep in mind, not every course has live classes, like the English 4U doesn't, for example. So for that one, if you need help, just give me a phone call directly. I mean, no matter what, you can give me a call, but just in case you're looking, we don't have every single thing with classes. All right, if you're going to hand in work, whenever you hand it in, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. You can CC me in the email if you wish to be doubly safe. That's jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. When you do that, you're making sure that the secretary can log that you submitted the work. You're also making sure that down the road, someone else can get that work back if they need to, because it's permanently in our database, right? So if you didn't finish the course this year and want to look at things again next year, we still have access to your assignments. Whereas if it's with me and I didn't happen to be here, then you've lost control of your assignments. Okay, on every assignment, please make sure to put the course name, your full name, the assignment number, and name. If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label them on the top and include them both in the same email. If the assignment does not ask for a rough draft, I request that you do not send me one because it can be confusing. Sometimes people are sending rough drafts for things that they don't really need to, and then I mark it and I find out later, oh wait, half an hour later, here's a good copy, which is much better, and I've got to kind of remark it. So if you are going to do that for some reason, please write down on it so that I know, because it can be frustrating, right? Sometimes to mark something twice. If you need to take a photograph of an assignment for some reason, please make sure it's really crisp and clear so that your writing can be read. Now, if you're sending that on to Facebook to me, that's fine. If you were emailing it to me, please do not email it directly. When you do that, it shows up really big and it doesn't always kind of show up properly on the computer. We can play with it and get it down, but it just kind of takes a few extra steps. If you can, it would be better if you download it to your own phone or computer, save it there, and then open up an email, send it to me as an attachment. It's much easier for us to access that way. Okay, our plan for the week. Yesterday, we covered assignment 10, 11, and 12. Today, we are going to work on assignments 13 and 14. So today's work, our big thing is basically we're going to be learning how to make regular, there's no regular present participles, recognizing which verb tenses use present participles, learning how to make regular and irregular past participles, recognizing which verb tenses use past participles, then create the present and past participles when you're given a base verb, create sentences which use present or past participles, and then write a sentence that utilizes present or past participles on a topic and format of your choice. So I don't know if you've noticed, but we kind of follow a pattern here where we kind of teach you how to identify it, teach you how to create it, and then we immediately try and get you to use it in both sentences and in longer paragraphs. And the whole thing is just kind of gearing us up for Unit 2. Unit 2 is a lot harder assignments. So this is kind of all our practice stuff. So some of it may seem really basic to you, and if so, I apologize, but then that should be nice and easy to whip through. But that's the reason why we're doing it this way. Okay, so we are in activity 4 now, and it's kind of a short one, I believe. We're just going to tackle number 13. So this is kind of a brief overview. I think it's a little too brief, but this is what is in your unit. So I'm just going to kind of read it so you sort of know where we are if you're not sure what we're talking about. The focus of this activity will be on the correct use of participles. You may recall from the terms to apply section earlier that a participle is really just a verb that has been extended, a word that's been formed from a verb. Examples that were given were the words running, ran, singing, sang. The main verb would originally have been run and sing. And although a participle is one form of a verb, it can also be used as an adjective to modify or describe a noun or a pronoun. Although that's nice to know, I want to point out that we're not going to be using it that way today, okay, but it will come up later. Basically, there's two types of participles. There's a present participle, which ends in ing. For example, Andrea is an entertaining speaker. And then there is the past participle, which usually, although not always, ends in ed. It can occasionally end in d by itself, or sometimes a t, okay? Every now and again, it might show up with an n. It's a bit tricky, that one. For example, she entertained the audience. So the base word of the verb, just sing, is not called a participle. Only the modified forms are called a participle. So that's what we're talking about today, okay? So, like I said, verbs have a basic root that we often use for actions happening in the present. Some examples might be I run, the girl can dance, I heard the train. And we often add endings to these verbs, and we're trying to show something different about the verb. And these verb endings are referred to as a type of, not the endings itself, but the verb plus the endings is referred to as a participle. Okay, we just talked about that. All right. So here's the actual assignment, and then we're going to talk about how to do it, okay? So it's got two parts. Part 1 is, given each of the following verbs, write both the present and the past participles. So for laugh, talk, burn, write, close, you're going to write both the present and the past participle for each one of those, okay? Sorry, hang on a sec. Oop, the computer kind of froze there on me. So for example, if the verb was stop, I would then write stopping, and I would write stopped. A lot of people skip this step and go right to part 2. But when you do that, I find, first of all, it's harder. Second of all, you lose marks because I don't give you the marks for part 1. So please do stop and do this part. I think the easiest way to do this is just set it up as a table. Up top, put the 5 main verbs, and then put the present participles and put the past participles. So for walk, you've got walking and then walked. Become has becoming and then became. Play has playing and then played. Fry has frying and then fried. Choose has choosing and then chosen. You need to make sure that you're adding the ed and the ing correctly to verbs, depending on their last letter. By this, I mean there's spelling. There are some spelling issues that we're going to talk about, okay? Also, you need to remember the common irregular verbs, which is really only important for the past participle. It doesn't really apply for the present. It's only applying for the past, okay? And then part 2 is take any 5 of the above present, or past participles and create a sentence of your own for each one. So you have to do all 10, just pick 5 of them. So we were laughing at the funny things we saw on television. Obviously, don't use the example they created. You'll have to do your own. Okay, marking. For part 1, creating the correct participle forms. I give you half a mark for each correct form for a total of 5 possible marks. So for the example we had where we had stop, stopping, and stopped, let's say you had stopping right, but you skipped stopped. Well, then you'd only get half a mark for that, okay? Part 2, you get 1 mark for each sentence that correctly uses one of the participle forms that you created in part 1 for a total of 5 possible marks. Okay, so this seems really boring. I'm going to acknowledge that right here because I know it kind of is. Why does it even matter? Well, the reason, well, it's kind of twofold. First of all, there's 12 different verb tenses in English, okay? It's kind of important to know. Many of them use present or past participles to help us indicate when an action happened or whether it was completed or whether it was continuous. Once you become familiar with these different participles, it can be really easy to form a verb in any one of the tenses. So recognizing present and past participles and understanding how to create them when you're writing your own work can help you to master one of the trickier aspects of the English language. It is a little dry. I will say, I think in fairness, I think verbs are the tough part of most languages because a lot of languages have what we have, where there's different endings or prefixes or things that you change about them to indicate different things in each language. The thing is, we don't all do it the same way, right? It'd be super easy to learn another language if we all did it the same way, but unfortunately, we just don't. Okay, so this is what we did the other day. I'm going to kind of just quickly look through it so you can see. This is all the present tense, present simple, present continuous, present perfect, present perfect continuous, which is kind of a combination of these two. So dream, thinks, draw, and walk, those don't count as a participle, right? Those are the base form. But when you use dreaming, thinking, drawing, or walking, that is the participle form. Same thing when you've got dreamed, thought, drawn, or walked here in the present perfect, like I have dreamed, he has thought. That counts as a past participle. Or yeah, you're using the past participle, even though it's present. I know it's kind of confusing, right? Because it's not about whether you're talking about now or later, it's looking at what form you use. And even though here we're talking about the present perfect, we're talking about an action that got finished in the past. So that's why they end up using the past tense, even though we're talking about it now. Same thing here, present perfect continuous, I have been dreaming. This is one where it's continuing into the present, so they continue to use the present perfect continuous. So I know it's a bit confusing. Let me think here. Past simple. Now, this past simple, this is the same thing as the past participle, okay? This is what you will use all the time when you need the past participle, okay? Now you can see we don't use the past participle for continuous because it doesn't imply the idea of an action continuing. We do use it for past perfect because past perfect, we always are talking about something that's completed. And then we don't use it for past perfect continuous. So it's not used for every type of past, okay? All right. Oh, it's falling kind of right off the board there. I don't know why that happened. All right. Future simple, again, the dream, think, draw, walk, that is the basic verb tense. We don't use that. That doesn't count as a participle. But we've got it in the future continuous. We use dreaming, thinking, drawing. Future perfect, we end up using the past participle, right? And then future perfect continuous, we end up using the present participle. So it's not about sorry, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. It's not about what time frame the action is happening. When you're getting into these more complicated types of verb tense, it's really more getting across the idea of, is the action continuing to happen, or is it completed or about to be completed? And if it's completed or about to be completed, you end up using that past tense form. And if it's continuous, you end up using that present participle form. So I'm going to kind of talk about this a little more deeply. So I know this is a little bit confusing. One thing to keep in mind when you're making these different verb tenses, you often need to add helping or linking verbs. Remember that these type of verbs often look very different depending on three things. Are we talking about the present or the past tense? Are we talking about singular or plural? And which type of person is it, first, second, or third? So if you're looking at the forms of the verbs to be and to have, which we end up using a lot for verb tenses, the first person singular, we use am for the form of to be. I don't know why it's never be. We use be in other things, but not in the present tense. I don't know why. Second person singular is. Third person singular is are. And we use that for he, she, it, and any singular nouns. And then for the plural forms of the form to be, first person plural we talk about are. Second person plural you, we use are again. And third person plural, we use are. That's with they and plural nouns. Okay, hang on. I just realized this should be are. I apologize. Okay, and then with have, first person singular and second person singular both uses the word have. I have, you have. And then when we use third person singular, he, she, it, or the singular nouns, we use has. He has, the boy has. And then for plural, we go back to using have again. Don't know why, but we do. We have, you have. And then third person plural, we use has again. I don't know why it doesn't change so much, but it doesn't. Now, same thing is in past tense. And once again, for some reason, the crazy verb to be just never looks like the verb to be in the main way we see it. I don't know why, it's very strange. So first person singular, I was. Second person singular, you were. Third person singular, which we use for he, she, it, and singular nouns, he was. And then for plural, were, we were. Second person plural, you were. Third person plural is they plus plural nouns. Oh, and it's the were again. We just use were over and over again. Sorry. For have, we use had for every single one of them. That makes that one easy. I don't know why, but it's nice and easy. So we use the present participle with these types of helping verbs to show an action that is continuous in some way, whether that's happening in the present, past, or future. So present continuous, we use whatever form of to be is correct, plus the present participle. I am running, he is running, we are running. And then for the past continuous, we use whatever form of to be in the past tense is correct, plus the present participle. I was running, she was running, we were running. And then for the future continuous, we use will plus be plus the present participle. I will be running, she will be running, we will be running. So the future continuous is kind of easy to do. All right. And then we have, this is the tricky form. This is one I really struggled with this one. I know I use it all the time in my speech, but trying to explain it, I really found different versions of it. So I apologize if it's not as clear as it should be, okay? Basically, it has the idea of something that's going on continuously, but you're also talking about when it might be completed, right? It's kind of that combination thing. So the present perfect continuous, we use the present form of have or has, plus being, plus the present participle. I have been running. He has been running. We have been running. So that's happened in the past, but it's continued on. The past perfect continuous uses had plus been plus the present participle. I had been running. She had been running. We had been running. Usually this one, I think it's interrupted, like you're trying to convey two different stuff. I had been running all year. I had been running up until I hit the path. It's often kind of a comparison one. Future perfect continuous, will plus have plus been plus the present participle. I will have been running. She will have been running. We will have been running. And I'm showing this to you so you know that these formats exist in order to make your sentences. Okay, so now we're going to get into kind of the spelling issue because there is a little bit of an issue and sometimes it kind of trips people up. So when you want to make a present participle by adding ing to a regular verb, you can always add it to create the present participle form. If it ends in two consonants, so here we've got talk, LK, we just go into talking, help, helping, seep, seeping, stain, staining, boat, boating. Now, if you're adding it to a short vowel word, one of those little 3-syllable words normally, with only one consonant after, you have to double the consonant, okay? Remember that any letter besides A, E, I, O, U is a consonant letter. So sit would become sitting, hop becomes hopping, stab becomes stabbing, hug becomes hugging, flip becomes flipping. So I think my original version had a little bit bigger slide. There we go. So the reason you double it is because some of these words could be a real word with an E on the end. So this kind of double consonant kind of shows you, nope, there's no E changing the long vowel sound. It's kind of keeping it a short vowel sound. Now, when you do add it to a verb that has the long vowel, then you just drop that E and just add the ing. And you don't need to protect it because the I is doing the same job that the E did, and it's telling that vowel to say its name. Did you guys learn that in school? That's what we always talk to the kids, right? If there's an E after that vowel, it's telling the vowel to say its name. So tune becomes tuning, slide becomes sliding, skate becomes skating. We do this in 2- and 3-syllable words as well, right? So if you see complete, there's an E on the end, but when I write the word completing, I drop the E and just use ing. Confuse, I drop the E, it becomes confusing. Delete, I drop the E, it becomes deleting. Stampede, drop the E, it becomes stampeding. Because E and I are very similar in sound, and kind of in this case, we sort of have them sort of switch jobs, right? The I kind of covers the job for E. Now, just like with the present participle, the past participle is also used to create different verb tenses, and it will generally show actions that are completed or are about to be completed. Basically, the simple past, the verb plus the ed form is always the past participle, okay? Not including the irregular verbs. So I walked home. And then you use that past participle over and over again in the different verb tenses. Sorry, my little sound system kind of fell off and yanked my ear. My apologies. Hope I didn't hurt anyone else's ears. That hurt mine. Yanked out of my ear there. Ouch. Okay, perfect past is had plus the past participle. We had walked home. Perfect future, will plus have plus the past participle. They will have walked home before midnight. And there's the same kind of spelling issues here, right? For a basic regular verb, we can just add ed to create a past participle. It works if you have two consonants at the end of the word. Camp becomes camped. Land becomes landed. Hunt becomes hunted. Milk becomes milked. Tilt becomes tilted. It also works when you have two vowels working together. Join becomes joined. Chain becomes chained. Steam becomes steamed. Write becomes righted. Moan becomes moaned. Where it gets tricky is if you have those short vowel words. Then when you add ed, that just like in the ing, you need to double the consonant, okay? Otherwise, again, same thing. You might get confused with another word in English that has a long vowel word that ends in E. So tip becomes tipped, cram becomes crammed. And in case you're wondering what I mean, like, for example, both these words exist. Hat exists and hate exists. And they both could get turned into a past participle. Now, I won't say hatted is very common, but you could use it as the idea of putting a hat on somebody's head. He hatted the baby, right? It's a weird word. It's not a common one, but it does exist, at least in my imagination anyways. Now here, hated, you can see it's only got the one T, and that's to differentiate it. And that's why you have to be kind of careful with English, is because you have these 3-letter words that get changed into a different word just by adding an E. So when you are adding the endings, you kind of have to preserve that difference so people understand what's going on there, okay? I don't know if that happens in other languages, but it's a problem in English. Now, when you're adding ED to a word that already ends in E, you don't double up, okay? Because in English, that would end up making a word that sort of, and it's got a double E, and the double E sound says E, not eh. So it would completely change the word, right? It would be like hated, phoned. It doesn't work, right? So hate, we just end up adding a D, phone, phoned, line, lined, flame, flamed. Again, this is also true, just like with the ing, when it's a 2-syllable word, we still do it. Divide equals divided, complete, completed, revoke, revoked. Because again, if you had the double E there, divided, it just sounds like a completely different word. It's confusing because double E has a whole different sound in English. So we don't double up that E. All right. Now when we add ed to a verb that ends in Y, it's wanting to fall off me here. We change the Y to an I, and then we add the ed. And again, this is one of those, again, goofy things in English. Y kind of can do more than one job, I guess is the best way to put it, right? So fry, we take off the Y, change it to an I, and add ed, fried. Ply, same thing, becomes plied. Cry becomes cried. Fly becomes flied. I'm going to take off the last two just because it's messing up how nice and neat it looked. But we don't change the Y if it's part of a vowel team, okay? So for example, play, the AY are working together, so we don't get rid of that Y. It would confuse people, okay? So play just becomes played. We just add the ed. Same thing with gray. We just add the ed, grade. Enjoy, enjoyed. Stay, stayed, okay? So that's one of those tricky things about the Y one. Now, the one other hard part about past participles is sometimes in English, ed sounds like a T, but it isn't. Sometimes in English, when it sounds like a T, it actually is. And I don't know why. I kind of hate English for that, but I can't fix it. I apologize. I only can teach you about it. So burn can become burnt, bless becomes blessed, loss becomes lost, build becomes built, bend becomes bent, send becomes sent. It isn't super common, but there are kind of a handful of verbs that do it. The other one where it's common is with the double E or the EA words, where you drop one E and you add a T to the end. I'm going to see if I can make this a little bit longer. If that would, there we go. So keep, we drop an E and it becomes kept. Oh, add PT. Sorry, it's not just a T. Sleep, we drop an E, slept. Weep, drop an E, becomes wept. Leap, this one we don't drop anything, we just leave it. And creep, we drop the E and we add crept. Now the reason this is important is because you need to know that form if you were using it. So if I was going to say, I have slept well every night, I need to make sure I am using the verb form slept, because if I said sleeped instead, in English we don't use that form, right? It's not correct. So you have to be aware of some of those past participles. If you're looking at a word and you're not sure, it's easy enough to look it up online or to look it up in a dictionary and kind of verify which kind it is. Oh, here are some other ones that are, that are irregular. I would have loved to make sure I got everyone. I don't think I got everyone, but I do get a lot of them. So blow becomes blown, grow becomes grown, hold becomes held, make becomes made, meet becomes met, hide becomes hid, see becomes saw, and pay becomes paid. Ring became rang, sing becomes sang, say becomes said, Leave becomes left. Like if I say leave the room or he left the room, right? Sell becomes sold, tell becomes told, ride becomes rode, eat becomes ate. That's one of the funny ones that people don't always notice. Break becomes broke, wake becomes woke, bleed becomes bled. We drop an E. Buy becomes bought, catch becomes caught, teach becomes taught, lead becomes led, and sink becomes sank. I was trying to include as many as I could so you had kind of a spot to look for these. So you would just do the assignment. All right, activity number 4, assignment number 14. Hopefully we have time to get through all this. If we don't, we'll just finish up tomorrow, okay? Basically, you're just writing a paragraph containing at least 6 sentences on a topic of your choice. You must include examples of you must include some examples of participles in your writing. Underline your examples. Remember your paragraph format, and remember that there are different types of writing formats, which we're going to talk about more in a second. So the marks for this. This is 10 marks. You get 5 marks for all the sentences correctly using a participle and underlining it. Then you get 3 marks for the overall communication skills you displayed in writing the paragraph. So just kind of your writing skills. And then 2 marks for the correct use of punctuation, capitalization, spelling, and grammar. Okay, so remember the criteria for a complete sentence. Every sentence must have a subject, which is the noun or pronoun, a predicate, which contains a verb that tells what the subject is doing or being, and it must express a complete thought. So if we look at these sentences, which of these is complete and correct? So weird, they were all lined up before, and now they've unlined themselves up. I don't know what they do while I'm gone. The man asked, is that complete and correct? Well, there is a subject and there is a verb, but that sentence is not complete. I don't know what he asked. You haven't told me. My cat was hungry. Cat is the subject, was is your verb, and it expresses a complete thought. Oops, and I should have included some X's. I'm going to take that away. It's not correct. Went walking late at night to my house. Okay, you haven't told me who's going walking. I can kind of guess that it's I from the word my, but I can't just guess in proper English. I have to actually put the word there. So that one's not correct either. I can't wait for Christmas. I is my subject. Can't wait is my verb phrase. For Christmas, it's a complete thought. So that one is correct as well. Also remember your paragraph format or framework, that there's a topic sentence, then you have at least 3 to 5 details, and then your closing sentence, right? We kind of use that paragraph format over and over again. We are also, even for a quick assignment like this, it's a good idea to run through the writing stages as you go along, because the more often you do it, the more often it becomes just kind of a good habit. And then when you go to do it for larger assignments, it's not something new and strange. It's something you're super familiar with, and it becomes very easy. So just going over the steps again, first part is planning or brainstorming. Second part is writing a rough draft. Third part is revising to improvise or improve it. 4th step is editing. 5th step is publishing. Now, for this paragraph, because it's any topic, so that means you can write on anything. I'm putting it open as you can also write any type of format, right? There's different paragraph formats. There are opinion paragraphs, which will explain your opinion on a particular topic. Like somebody said, hey, what's the best restaurant in town? And you can write a paragraph on it. Narrative paragraphs might tell a brief recount about an imaginary or a real event. So like a little mini story. A descriptive paragraph might just be describing anything, like a landscape, people, objects, lots of sensory details, how things look or sound or feel. Might not be any kind of story to it. It's just kind of describing something very vividly. Informational paragraphs convey information or explain a concept, kind of thing you might read in a science magazine or a history textbook. And then procedural paragraphs tell you the sequence or the steps to accomplish a certain task. Now, when I did this, I'm going to show you later on, I'm going to advise don't do the procedural paragraph because the format of procedural paragraphs has kind of a problem, and that is that normally we write it in the simple present. We say, mix the batter, nail the hammer in, or whatever. We don't use the participle forms usually. So I originally thought it would be okay, but when I started to look at it, I realized it's not really going to work. So I would avoid the procedural format. So here, let's say I had the topic, I want to write about hunting. Okay, what type of paragraph do I want to write? I could write a narrative. I could write about my favorite hunting trip. I could write a procedural. That was before I said don't do it. So right now I would say don't do this. I don't know how to, I'm not trying to, just picture this being gone, okay? Informational, I could be telling somebody all about the best time to go moose hunting. Opinion, I could be talking about Indigenous hunting rights on First Nations land or on non-First Nations land. Descriptive, I could just be describing a moose or describing what it's like to be waiting to catch a moose. All right, so you have a bunch of options of what you could write about, even within the topic of hunting, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So once you got your topic, just put it in the middle here. Now this, I gotta apologize, this is not in your unit. If anybody wants it, just let me know. I can easily take a little snapshot of this and send it to you. It's just a kind of a cute way to brainstorm. You would pick a new topic, right? Oh, what happened there? My apologies. Sorry, I was trying to get rid of the word hunting. Whole shape decided to disappear. Okay, you would put your topic there, and then you would think, how could I tell a story about this? How could I do an informational piece about this? How could I talk about my opinion on this thing? How could I describe this thing? Right? So different topics might lend themselves to a different format. When you were thinking of it, you might have been automatically thinking, oh my gosh, I've got this great story I want to tell, or oh my goodness, I have really strong opinions and I want to be heard, right? So you may already, as you were thinking about the topic, knew what kind of paragraph you wanted to write. And if so, that's awesome. If you didn't, take a few minutes and just think it out. Again, you don't have to spend forever on this, right? Just because we're going through the steps doesn't mean that each step has to take a while. Each step could be 5 minutes, right? Just because we're doing steps doesn't mean it needs to take a long time. So once you've explored some of the possible formats, like I said, it often becomes really obvious which format you want to try writing in. So again, this isn't in your book. You don't have to do this. This is just kind of a pretty way to show you what you might be thinking about. Again, if anybody wants this, I'd be happy to send it to you. What's your topic? What format are you going to write in? Now, each format has something important that you need to think about. So if I'm doing a narrative paragraph and I'm telling a story, then usually stories are chronological. I got to tell my events in order. I've got to, there's going to be a character, there's going to be a setting. Whereas if I'm telling about informational, there isn't necessarily any chronological order, right? There isn't necessarily any story. I might just start from, hey, here's my big idea, and then here's some important details that go along with that big idea. So whenever you're thinking about your format, think about what does that mean you need to do when you write, because each of them have something special that you need to think about when you're using that format. And then important points, that's just kind of what would you write down? What are some of your ideas? This would actually be longer. This could easily just be a piece of loose leaf. And again, this isn't something you have to hand into me. I just was kind of, showing what I might do if I was thinking about this. Okay. Once you got some rough ideas written down, go ahead and start a rough draft. Remember that the whole point of this is that you need to use participle forms of the verbs. So either the present participle, which is the verb plus ing, or the past participle, which is the verb plus the ed. And you need to underline every participle verb form that you use. But if you are only using the original base form with no ending, you do not need to underline the verb. Having said that, don't write me a paragraph that doesn't ever use the participles, because there's no way for me to give you points then, because you've missed the whole point of the assignment, right? Don't forget about the irregular forms. I said present and past tense, but there is no irregular form of the present. There's only irregular forms of the past tense. I don't know why, but there's no irregular present. But they need to be underlined. So here's a little story, and we're going to read it quickly and then underline which ones I would need to underline if I was a student handing this in. Let me tell you about the time I got lost in the woods. I had worked late one night and decided to walk home from work instead of calling a taxi. I heard a noise in the bushes and crept closer to go check it out. Okay, so let me tell you. Tell is a verb, but it's not an ing or an ed verb, so I'm not going to use it. Got, lost. These are actually both past participles. So I'm going to underline both of them. I wish the underline was stronger. I apologize that it's not. Hopefully you can see that. I had worked. Okay, so here had is going along with worked. So you could just do it that. If you were nervous about this one, you could do it like a kind of one underline altogether. Decided. Decided is another participle form. Now, to walk. To walk is a verb, but it's not an ing or an ed one. So I'm not gonna underline it. Calling a taxi. Calling is an ing one. I'm gonna do that. I heard a noise. Now, heard is not an ed, but it is a past tense. It's one of those irregular past tense ones. So I am going to underline it. I heard a noise in the bushes and crept closer to go check it out. So crept, remember we talked about that? That's one of the irregular verb forms. So I'm going to underline it. To go is a verb, but it's not a participle form. Check is a verb, but it's not a participle form. So this is an example of how you might do this, okay? You have to be careful. Sometimes I get people, they've written me a beautiful paragraph, but they've forgotten to do the underlining. Okay, I do want you to underline because I want you to be aware of it, and it is part of your marks. Okay, so if we do run out of time here, I'm not going to worry about it because I'm just going to kind of show you a few different formats that you might want to try. You could try an opinion format. So here I'm talking about the best restaurant, what I think is the best restaurant, right? Everybody might have a different opinion. It's hard to make the ultimate decision on which restaurant is my favorite, Malachi's restaurant or the Wooden Spoon. On the one hand, I love the amazing Italian food I can get at Malachi's for special occasions. On the other hand, for everyday comfort, you can't beat the home-style meals at the Wooden Spoon. I would happily choose Malachi's to impress a first date, although it would be out of my range on an everyday basis. So there's an opinion. I've given you my idea, and I've given you my reasons why. Now, I haven't gone through and underlined, so I would need to go do that. Like, okay, so now it's hard to make. Make is not a past tense. Which restaurant is my favorite? Love, can get, oh, can't beat. Now, so there is a problem here. What is the problem with this one? I wrote it all in the present tense, which means there are no past participles. So I would need to change this around in order to do the assignments. I might want to end up talking about like maybe my favorite time at Malachi's restaurants. Try to think if it's possible to change the opinion format so that it's past tense. I could. On the one hand, I have always loved the amazing Italian food I have gotten at Malachi's. So I changed it. So if you go to do the assignment, like I did, and realize, oh, wait, I got mixed up. I didn't remember to use the past participle. That's fine. Go back and change it so that it does. I would want more than that. I would go through and do the whole thing, but I'm just kind of giving you an example of how it might look. Narrative format is where we're talking about, again, a little story. The day had started so wonderfully. First, he had woken up to the sound of Mia singing downstairs and the smell of fresh pancakes in the air. Next, they had gone for a leisurely walk in the woods behind the house. It had all been so peaceful until they had seen the old shoe sticking out of the bush beside the trail. Okay, so I definitely had started would work. Had woken up would work, right? Woken is technically the participle, right? Although had is a past participle format as well. So that works as well. And I would keep on going. Singing, yep, that works. Let me see. Yeah. All right. Then informational. So I'm not going to do this. This one is all about City of Windsor. You can read it on your own time. Just kind of quickly looking. Is a verb, but it's not a present or a past participle, so I wouldn't use it. Okay. Developed is a past participle, so that would work, right? Designed, that's another past participle, that would work. Okay. Now, procedural format. If you want to decorate a room, the first thing you need to do is think about your budget. After you know what kind of money you have to spend, then you need to think about your favorite styles. Next, you need to figure out which colors are important to you. Now, why did I say this was a bad format to choose? Because it's all written in present tense, which is pretty common with procedural paragraphs. So there are no past participles. I suppose I could say, like, if you wanted to decorate a room, but it's kind of awkward. I really would just avoid it at this point. So I'm going to write that in big words. Don't use this format. Okay. Hang on. Okay. Just because it doesn't meet this assignment. Normally you could, but just it doesn't meet this assignment. All right. Then once you've got your first draft, run through it and do some revision. Again, it's a tiny little paragraph. It should really only take about 10, 15 minutes. Just look it over, see where can it be improved. Does it make sense? Did I follow the format that I chose? Are my sentences complete and not running on? Should I add any important details? Should I improve my vocabulary? And most importantly, this is not exactly the writing part, but did I underline my participles? Okay, right. Now I don't have it here, but obviously then you would also go through and check, have you got capitals where you need capitals? Are there any usage errors? Is there any punctuation errors? Are there any spelling errors? You always do that before you hand it in. Remember that each stage could easily be 5 or 10 minutes. Probably the first rough draft might take you a little bit longer, but it is still important to get into the habit of running through all the stages, okay? Tomorrow we will look at assignment 15 and maybe 16, I think. If you have any questions, I will be here for a little while. Go ahead and give me a phone call. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.